Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, where we help innovate your career by providing you bi-weekly mini bite-sized tactics to help you drive your professional development in a tune-up style. So prepare to get totally future-proofed. Hey, innovators, I got sick last week or whatever. So you know what you do when you get sick, you end up kind of turning on the TV, and I ended up putting on Netflix. But I didn't realize the Riverdale new season was out. I kind of dip in and dip out of Riverdale. I'll be honest, I've always kind of been a Brandon Walsh type of girl over Dylan McKay. But I actually wanted to see what this whole thing with Dylan, or what I should call him, Luke Perry, with his old death when he passed away, which was a big surprise, and how Netflix was actually going to kind of incorporate in the storyline. So I have to say, I was super surprised about this Netflix episode. And I watched it and how they honored Fred Andrew, who was played by Luke Perry. I have to say this episode was seriously wow. They truly, truly nailed it. And it really got me thinking a little bit about how they did it and their approach and what it was like. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about where I'm going to go with this. But what I want to talk about is about how they handled a character like Luke Perry, who has been around in 90210. This is where he came from, and he's been in tons of movies. But he really was a teen idol heartthrob for many of us that are in my generation. And so when he went to start with Riverdale, it was really fascinating because we all wanted to see what he looks like as a grown-up, because we all had childhood crushes on him. Again, I was more of a Brandon Walsh girl, but it was really beautiful. How they handle his death was really beautiful. The writers truly honored Luke Perry and the audience, which looks like people like myself that grew up with Luke Perry. In this episode, in Riverdale, we truly got to mourn his death. Okay, I even added a little link about a little photo tribute just in case you want to kind of see who Luke Perry was and some stuff, but my sister and I, and who is a decade younger than me, were bawling throughout the entire episode. Like, these writers, when they wrote, they were definitely thinking with their hearts, with a level of empathy that was so evident. You could totally feel it. We actually felt like we had attended his funeral and got to say goodbye to him. They invoked so many memories and really helped us along the journey. Like, there were a few hidden surprises that just took our breath away. And this is where it has led me about why I wanted to do this episode. It really got me thinking about design thinking. And this wasn't a great example of utilizing the design thinking frameworks. Now, I know, first of all, we probably have heard the words design thinking so many times, and it's been very hard to envision and understand. And I'm going to explain what it is, and then I'm going to give you tips about how this actually all works and how you get to this type of outcome where audiences and your customers and your stakeholders really believe and not just believe, they feel that they are really connected with you because you really understand them. It's a different way of thinking, but it's actually quite more natural than we realize. We just haven't put together the two and two of how it actually runs in our parallel lives. So basically, design thinking is really a human-centered design. Now, what that means, it's different than really a system-centered design. So I don't know if you've actually gone into shopping somewhere and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like so many clicks and I don't understand and I just want to buy this product and it's just so difficult. That's kind of a system-centered design. It wasn't thinking about exactly how you and I would have gone to the website, done some searching, how we actually would have actually navigated through the page or the app, or even in general about, all the different types of services around. It's actually thinking more from what they want us to do versus how we would actually interact with it. And this is where this whole thing about human-centered design, it's actually thinking about how you are really going to use it. They're using use cases in a very different way. So back to Riverdale, these show writers really understood their target market. So having all the Riverdale parents, they're actually all teen idols and teen stars from the 80s. So as we know, we've got Luke Perry. We got Molly Ringwald, if you remember her from 16 Candles. Mark Consensus, Skeet Ulrich, Robin Givens, Madden Amick, and so on. Like all of the parents in this Riverdale show are really teen idols. So they are trying to attract two things when they were actually doing with this. They kept the audience in mind when writing this episode. So they understood that the target audience and the different audience personas, which means that every piece of content spoke to the audience personas, which is exactly why this Riverdale episode and the funeral of Fred Andrews, which is AKA Luke Perry, was such a big deal. How they handled it so tastefully will actually encourage and give them more loyalty to this show because they really understand the actual users. So design thinking really does provide a real hybrid approach to problem solving. It just doesn't look at data and analytics and science and all that. It also uses emotions and intuition. This design thinking, again, so that the parents are all from the 80s and now we all have kids, then we're actually probably watching the show with our teenage kids because the content of all these kids, Archie and the gang and all the mysteries they're up to is really enticing as them as a storyline. But as a parent that actually knew these people from the, teen stars, we are actually looking at it from a different perspective, but it allows us to connect with a different generation over a different show, because it actually is addressing two different generations. It's actually a really big deal. So let me explain a little bit more. The whole thing about design thinking is that it provides a real hands-on approach to problem solving, not just researching on a computer or Google to problem solve. It really gets you out to the field to talk to the people to hear and understand. It's more like less talk, more action, right? Don't you always wish that always happened, that people would just stop over planning things to death and let's just go, let's go. And if you look at your bosses and everything else, they're so outcome based. Okay, what did we achieve? What was the outcome? What was that? It's not about the work in progress. It's more about the short, small, quick wins. And that's what we focus on. Now, going back to the whole thing about Riverdale and the different types of audiences, because they had gone out to speak to the different audiences and groups and do that testing, they were able to understand that people were really impacted by Luke Perry passing away. And honestly, that's exactly what they decided to do, was to come through the storyline with a human-centered approach that people want to mourn and remember Luke Perry, not just for his character, but a little bit of Luke Perry. It's really interesting. So when they got out into the field to hear about what's next on Riverdale, all the questions people were probably asking is like, how are they going to handle the death in the show? He brought this memory and I grew up with this and so on. So they really thought about it and they talked to people to understand not just the user, they also understood what some of the challenges and opportunities that have shown up. And that's exactly what it was. So less talk, more action, and they were able to get a more iterative process where they actually took the time to seek to understand the user, which is me, challenge the old type of stuff of how things get handled. There could have just been a death and that's a mystery and that's it and call it a day. No, they decided to make it a journey because they knew that we as the user needed to go through that. And now what they're going to find is that because of how we're thinking with design thinking from a human person, I always think about stuff like, what would my mom say about this? Or how would I explain it to my mom? Because if she doesn't get it, no one's going to get it. So I always test information on to make sure they could understand the value. And if it's easy to understand in a real English way, people are going to join you in that journey. But we often get into this whole area of we just use the same buzzwords over and over and over again. And so we act like we're super, super smart and people are really not following along with us because they're confused. So design thinking really is a total shift to the mindset. There are tons of times when we get caught up in meetings and we are not actually talking to the people that get impacted into our workplace. So we tend to always hear things, you hear things from people, the end users or, head office once again made a decision without actually understanding what's really going on. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? People tend to make decisions based on data. They're not doing it based on actual intuition and emotions and understanding the users of using those things. So we tend to do a lot of making these decisions and planning based on analytics without doing actually any early testing to see if the stuff that we are seeing as terms of information, if it's really reflecting in the reality of things. So one of the things about the design thinking is about you designing the solution in real time with actual end users, meaning the people that are actually going to be using that solution. That's where you're going to hit the sweet spot. You're going to get the end user adoption. You're going to get a much better, richer product or service or whatever it is because you're experimenting with them. You're experimenting with the actual end users that you're hoping to actually attract. This is huge. That's exactly what they're doing. Now, you know me, I get tactical because I really, there's so many things that are so theoretical and are not exactly most applicable. So I'm just going to give you a couple of tips for you to start to embrace that design thinking. And again, this is a perfect way of thinking. I always say, know thy audience, including the audience personas. Okay, industry buzzwords, I totally get it. All I'm saying is really find out who's going to use what it is that you're talking about. Whether it is you're doing something at work, and yes, you're giving it to your boss, perhaps, but what exactly are they going to be using it for? Understanding a little bit more about the intent and what they're trying to accomplish and what are their stakeholders, what are their end users that they're going to be providing this to. You've got to think a little bit more about that and truly get to understand that audience, because they're not just asking for, a report for the sake of it. They're asking for that report because of what? What is it trying to tell them? Is it something that they can actually find as an opportunity to talk to their other bosses about, other stakeholders about? What is it? And then look a little bit differently about that. Because doing the same old, and just generating reports for the sake of it, because and you're thinking, oh, no one's reading it. It's because you're not providing any value. Take a look at these things. What are these people struggling with? What are the opportunities? What are their goals that they're trying to focus on? What's worked well before where they got to achieve it? What's changed? We got to really look at that. So know thy audience. Take the time to really understand what they're after. What are they looking for? What's the intent? 2, about the whole design thinking. You got to learn from failures. So we already said that you get out and start doing less talking, more action. And so that allows you to really, truly test early. Because by actually doing small bits of things, you're testing it out to see, okay, did it work? Did it not? Okay, thank goodness I did invest 6 months into something and then didn't pan out anywhere. So get out there and listen and talk and learn. Don't just sit there and Google and do research. Design thinking really does go beyond a computer. It goes back to the basics, think pre-internet time. You just got to go out and talk to people. I always think about, all those shows, like Mad Men, about the advertising agencies and how they were so great at doing what they did. They used to talk and spend the time to get to know the markets and get to know if this idea would work. Or, you come up with a word and you're testing on different cultures to see if that word means something different or if it sticks or if it resonates. Get out there, test early. The other tip is embrace ambiguity. Don't be afraid of not knowing things. This is where so many folks fail and they fall victim to the imposter syndrome. Not knowing something is actually an advantage because it allows you to look at things with a new set of eyes. You get to look at gaps and look at unknowns as clues. You get to play detective and enjoy the mystery because you don't know where it's going to take you. You allow yourself to be more open to actually hearing and understanding as opposed to proving a thesis. I always think about lawyers when they argue a case. They take the facts to prove their thesis, that the person's either guilty or not guilty, right? That's what they've done. But if they actually were talking to different, when you look at the police, what they're doing is that when they're looking and interviewing all these different people, they're looking for different clues to see if there's other potential kind of paths that led this to it. So they're not just kind of, hey, this is so-and-so, I just need to close the books. They're looking for that. So you're playing the detective, enjoying that mystery and that fear of not knowing something is actually a really good thing. It allows you, again, to look at things with a clean set of eyes. I don't know if I've actually mentioned this, but this is one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Edison, and he's the one that invented the light bulb. But, people always said, that he failed so many times before he got it. And he said, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that it wouldn't work. And that is so powerful because that's just feedback. You found 10,000 ways of things for feedback that pushed you in a direction to see what is going to work. So all those times where you're kind of uncertain about things, every time you do a smaller temperature check or test something early, you're just finding out if this is the path that's going to get us there or not. And then you get to move into a different direction. And then, of course, this leads me to my fourth tip. Iterate and continuously improve. Again, if you're testing early, you're going to get feedback early that you could tweak and then actually get out there to do something else. Like, don't develop something and go into a black box until you finish developing everything. Touch base with your customers, your audiences, your stakeholders, and frequently grab their feedback to improve things throughout the process. I mean, honestly, you'll have better collaboration, you'll get a better product itself, and you may be able to find something else that you may have an opportunity that you may not have seen. Anyways, I really hope this helps. And honestly, it came because I said the whole Riverdale episode, how they did it really was embracing all the design thinking principles beyond belief. Like, they really got down to know the audience and really let them be part of that journey. And I really hope that this helps you understand about what the design thinking and how it is going to impact you in how you do things in your own job, how you're doing things in your own business, because it really, really helps. Now, one of the things about, continuously improving, people tend to finish a milestone and that's it, right? And then they're like, okay, but you've got to take the time to do a reflections after action review. It literally takes about maybe 5 to 10 minutes and to reflect some thinking of did it work, did it not? Because I'll tell you, the next time you do that activity, you are not going to remember all the details of what actually just happened. So, after I wrote my first book, I definitely wrote down the lessons learned because honestly, there were so many things that I could have done so much more differently and would have speed things up if I had known and understood all the process to begin with. But more importantly, I actually found other things that I would actually make it even better. So guess what? I'm going to start writing my second book soon. But anyways, I actually did put together a little freebie, and so you just can click and you can get your own template for the Reflections After Action Review. So you could do it after every milestone, whatever goal that you're working towards, and try to actually think about it. Anyways, I also put together some little bit of links about, who Luke Perry was, because I kind of wanted to get some pictures, but really about the feedback that they're getting regarding their episode and how they really have increased the brand loyalty by doing this design thinking. And I also added a little link about design thinking mindset. So anyways, I really hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Have a great day. Cheers. Thank you so much for joining and listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, please share with your friends and colleagues. You can share on social media, the email link, the newsletter, and so on. Let's continue to support these Canadian innovators and help them really grow into bigger brands. Awareness and knowledge is totally key. Anyways, I can't wait to talk to you next week. Cheers.